Hello everyone, welcome to Full Moon Movies. There are certain films you revisit not because they promise nostalgia, but because they promise a different interpretation of something familiar. The Running Man is one of those films. Unlike the 1987 version that leaned into spectacle and personality, this new adaptation feels more grounded, more unsettling, and at times closer to reality than we might be comfortable admitting. Directed by Edgar Wright, the film shifts the focus from arena-style entertainment to something far more expansive, like a society where media, survival, and truth are all intertwined. At the center of it is Ben Richards, played by Glen Powell, and what stands out immediately is how different this version of Ben really feels. He isn't introduced as a hero, he's introduced as a man already crushed by the system. A blacklisted worker struggling to afford medicine for his daughter. Ben enters the game not for fame or rebellion, but out of desperation. And that shift in motivation grounds the film emotionally. You're not watching a man who really likes to prove his strength, but you're watching a man trying to survive a system that has already decided his worth. The concept of the Running Man itself is where the film becomes powerful. It's not just a game show, it's a nationwide spectacle where contestants are hunted not just because by trained killers, but by a society conditioned to participate. Viewers don't just watch, they react, judge, and become part of the system. The idea alone gives the film a much more sharper edge compared to its predecessor. As the story unfolds, Ben is given a head start, minimal resources, and one requirement: to stay alive for 30 days. But what makes this version compelling is that survival is not just physical, it's psychological. The deeper Ben goes into the game, the more the film explores how media manipulation shapes reality. One of the most striking elements is the use of deepfake technology. At one point, Ben attempts to expose the truth only for his message to be replaced with a fabricated version of himself. Now, that moment hits hard because it reflects a very real fear today that truth is no longer just hidden but actively rewritten. Glen Powell's performance captures the transition really very well. He starts as a man trying to stay focused and rational, but as the hunt intensifies, paranoia, anger, and the defiance begin to take over. His journey becomes less about winning the game and more about reclaiming control over his identity. The supporting cast strengthens the world significantly. Josh Brolin plays Dan Killian, the producer who understands exactly how to manipulate both contestants and audiences. His character doesn't rely on intimidation, he relies on control, persuasion, and narrative shaping. Now, this reminds me a bit about The Big Boss. Now, Coleman Domingo, as the show host, adds another layer, turning brutality into entertainment with charisma and confidence. Meanwhile, Lee Pace, as the lead hunter, brings a cold, calculated presence that elevates the threat level of the film. The action sequences in this film deserve special mention. Unlike the confined arena battles of the 1987 version, the film expands the scale significantly. From urban chases to explosions, drone surveillance, and high-speed escapes, the action really feels more dynamic and unpredictable. But more importantly, it always feels tied to the narrative. Each sequence reinforces the idea that Ben is being hunted not just by individuals, but by an entire system. There's also a particularly intense stretch involving a hostile attack and a bridge sequence that showcases how the film balances chaos with tension. Now, that action isn't just about survival, it's about escape, adaptation, and improvisation. And I can say the action sequences in this movie are really very good. Now, as we move towards the later half of the film, the story shifts from survival to resistance. Ben begins to connect with underground activists, and what starts as a personal struggle becomes something really larger. The film subtly transitions into a story about exposing systems rather than escaping them. Now, looking at how Running Man, released in 2025, fares compared to its predecessor, the differences are really very clear. The 1987 version, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, is remembered as a cult classic driven by charisma, theatrical villains, and memorable one-liners. It was bold, exaggerated, and leaned heavily into the entertainment. Now, this 2025 version, however, is more aligned with the original novel's tone, which is darker, more grounded, and more focused on societal structures. It trades exaggerated spectacles for psychological tension and modern relevance. Now, that shift, however, may also explain its reception. Now, the film actually received mixed reviews, with many praising its energy and performances, while others felt it didn't really fully reach the level of Edgar Wright's best work. More importantly, it struggled at the box office, earning under 70 million worldwide against a much larger budget. Now, compared to the original film, which was found its audience over time and became a cult favorite, the 2025 version feels like a film that may really take a bit longer to be appreciated. It's less immediately entertaining in a traditional sense, but arguably more relevant in its themes. And I think the biggest takeaway from this version is its timeliness. The idea that media can manipulate perception, that public opinions can be engineered, and that individuals can be turned into narratives rather than people feel incredibly current. Now, by the end of the film, Ben Richards is no longer just a contestant. He becomes a symbol of resistance, of truth, and how easily systems can be disrupted when their narrative control is broken. The Running Man in 2025 may not have achieved immediate success, but it stands as a bold reinterpretation of a familiar story. It replaces spectacle with substance, and while they may divide audiences, it also gives the film a lasting relevance that goes beyond its initial reception. Now, this movie is a must-watch.